Junes, free tank is here, and today's video is going to cover everything that you need to know about this free tank in World of Tanks console, and hopefully that will be good to get your opinion in the comment section down below as to what you think of the aufl panzer, because me personally, I find this tank amazing. This thing has pretty much everything that you need as a light tank. There are some negatives that we'll cover within this video, but primarily I feel like this is the one that just carries. And this replay right here is a really nice carry that I managed to have on Prokhorov essentially, and in a matchup where, you know, we're pretty much top tier. Light tanks don't typically end up at top tier, to be honest with you, but when you do, this thing becomes even more deadly, and that's because this tank has the Panther hull, which allows it to be heavy, and heavy it is. And that means that if you're coming up against tier 6s, if you're coming up against tier 5s, they're essentially pretty much all of the time lighter than you, which means that you can just go in, you can ram them. And the setup we're actually using on the aufl panzer is the spool liner. We've got the perks that enable you to ram for more damage, albeit we probably won't use them in this replay here, but it's something that you can always do, especially when you come up against the opposing light tanks. And when you do come up against the opposing light tanks, that's where you can make a massive difference within the games, and that's where I always have so much fun, especially when you're ramming into things like the Spick, which basically weighs absolutely nothing comparatively to the Panther. Don't get me wrong, if you're trying to ram tier 9 heavies, it's going to go very badly because you are just a Panther, remember. It's just if you are ramming light tanks, even tanks like the CDC, you will be able to demolish within World of Tanks console with this tank if you do decide to ram them. Remember, if you do have all of the perks on, it's so much better, but it is not a tank that you should probably be ramming if you don't have any of the perks or equipment or anything else that can kind of help you and negate the damage that you'll be receiving from the ram. And sometimes it might even be better not to ram them, even if you can do a load of damage, just because you wouldn't have had to take a shot in the first place, and therefore, you know, you can come out somewhat on top within the game. Now, we've taken quite a lot of damage. We've not actually done that much damage within this replay, but that all changes as the game develops, and that is exactly how light tanks should be played within console. And that is because as you go on in the game, you become more and more kind of powerful as a light tank, because the team, they can only do so much. And when you, as the light tank player, kind of know what you're doing and know where to go, the enemy team just cannot compete, because you have the view range advantage over most tanks, unless of course you are 2 tiers below and you're playing up against mediums or the opponent's light tanks. Unfortunately, in this game, there is only 1 light tank on our team left alive, which is me, and there's 2 on the enemy team. Now, we try and make a swift escape here, because if we can get away, that'll be perfect. We do take 1, which means that we are now a one-shot for anything with 300 alpha or above. Doesn't take a genius to work that one out, but the key thing here is that we have to play very carefully. Now, that play right there was probably the biggest thing that we could have done, because if we did not escape, we definitely and surely would have been taken out within this replay. However, what you're seeing here, the Spick that decided to YOLO me, is now moving in towards our base. And from this point, I'm thinking, oh damn, this is going to get very bad very quickly. Luckily for us, we kind of decide that it's time to hightail it out of it. It's time to actually move. It's time to get somewhere where we can actually perform. Now, we do bounce 1 off of the Spick, but we make a little light contact, which of course, when you're in a heavy boy like this, you're going to end up dealing a lot of damage. And you can see there, with just a graze onto the opponent light tank, we managed to pick up quite a bit of damage. You're seeing me auto-aiming here. We decide to actually fully aim here just to try and get some damage on the Capture KV-1 whilst he's deciding to YOLO's the J-Panther, which saves him just for a kind of a small amount of time, maybe that he can actually escape with his life. However, What we're doing now, I want to try and spot for my team, at least to a degree, if we can spot anyone cresting ridges. You can see rounds coming in from quite a far away at the tank that we had, which was the J Panther. Unfortunately, he does get taken out, but from this sort of perspective, it's looking terrible. It's 7-4, it's now 7-3. We probably aren't going to come out alive. However, the hammer there is kind of moving forward. You're seeing one key weak point of the aufl Panzer Panther is that if you try and aim over the back of this tank, it's terrible. You get very little gun depression. It means that it becomes very inflexible, and overall you're going to end up in a bad position. Now what I'm doing here in this matchup is just coming forward to get some damage on potentially the hammer as he advances, because he looked like he was going to be coming over towards us, and if we can outspot him using the view range advantage that light tanks have, then it's going to be perfect. Now you see me actually going up on the slope to try and see if we can get over a ridgeline to maybe spot him, get better vision out there. Unfortunately that doesn't happen, and it's now 6-2, which to all intents and purposes is not particularly great when you've got a lot of the tier 7s left alive. There's also a full health OI who's been sat in the middle of the game just being a little nuisance. We finally get spotted by the hammer. We put one round into him. We try and go for the second, but it doesn't actually hit. The hammer then messes up by missing. Probably should have fully aimed that one. And then we're going to hopefully use the DPM of the tank to actually pick him apart, which we do manage to do. And then in the last moment we spot the Jackson, who is now making his way towards us, and it's getting a bit heated within this replay, and we're hoping that we can get away. I put the bush behind me that you just saw us go past between us, just provides a little bit extra cover if he decides to just come straight through that area there. And now we need to go and help out our teammate, because if our teammate gets taken out, it's going to be a 1 versus 4. It's going to be terrible. Now we go off in after this SU, and we place a nice consecutive rounds on the move at him. We go for a shot at the OI. Never expected that one to actually land on the OI, let alone actually pen him. And then from here, we've got the tier 7 French heavy on our side, the AMX M445, who could provide some support. But I need to make sure that we're not doing anything silly. So what I'm going to do is disengage from the conflict. I don't want to be the one furthest forward. I can use the fact that the AMX M4 is spotting for our team to push up into a position that benefits my tank and being able to remain undetected. I know that there's this OI experimental who's moving forward. The Jackson is pushing in from behind, and we can use this position to farm, and I mean farm, the OI experimental, and he really doesn't have much of a choice. We then decide to move just in case he blind fires, which he does actually blind fire, but of course, because since we moved, he misses, and we managed to take him out. Now then, having done what we've done in this replay, we don't want to lose it. We can definitely win this gameplay. So what we do is we get behind this little bush here. We see the Jackson. We lock him down by tracking him. Then we go for another final shot, and then it's game over for the Jackson. There's no way he can reverse quickly enough to get out of our way. And from this point forward, it is now a 1v1. We've managed to bring it from a 7-3 all the way to a 1 versus 1 at the end of the game. I almost make the probably one of the worst mistakes you could possibly make in the game, which is trying to fall off a cliff and end up being taken out. Now that doesn't happen, and I'm so glad it didn't, because from this point we're going to try and do some more tactical plays. And I guess we can use this time within this replay to talk more about how you can play this tank, because yes, you've seen me play it in quite a kind of carrying sense where you're able to be quite flexible, where you're able to use, of course, the best light tank map in the game, Prokhorovka, to your effect. And albeit we've only picked up 788 assistance damage, which isn't the best, don't get me wrong. It's not the worst, but for a tier 7 light tank, you could probably expect to get like, what, 4k spotting damage if you have a really great game on this map. But for me personally, the aufl Panzer Panther is more than just your typical spotting light tank. It's all about being that brawling playstyle and being able to get involved. And I even find on town maps, because this tank is somewhat decent, you can use the good view range of the tank whilst also using the armor model of the tank, because you can side scrape in the aufl Panzer Panther comparatively to a lot of the other tanks, because yet again you are a Panther hull, which means that you're able to do things that others aren't. Now what do we do when we have no idea where the enemy heavy tank is? Well, we're going to take the smart play, which is not to just YOLO through. We're going to kind of take the long way round. We're going to keep ourselves at a distance. One thing that I can note here on Prokhorovka is if you are a light tank or a medium, or you're trying to spot someone, you can crest this ridge here, which allows you to spot through the railway tracks, which then allows you to get vision on anyone that's really close. It also allows you to proxy spot anyone that's on the opposite side of the railing, so we know that there's no one in the close proximity in the field, which allows us to now move forward. Now, the one thing that I was a little bit scared at this point in the battle is deciding to go across this field, because we never know, World of Tanks and the spotting mechanics, when someone's sat in a bush, we never know if the final tank is going to be sat in a bush directly in front of us. If he is, that could be terrible. We don't know how many hit points this tank is on, because we don't have the feature where we can see the remaining hit point pools on the HUD. Maybe that will come at a certain point within World of Tanks console, but it is of course on World of Tanks PC at the minute, which is a very, very good addition. And what can we do from here? Well, we're going to use the bush mechanics, of course, since we are the light tank. And what I also want to do is get some vision onto the central area of the map, so we take a little swing left. And this is the sort of thing you should be thinking about when you're in these carrying scenarios. You don't have to be a super brain box. Yes, I could be really I don't have to do all of these steps, but these steps slightly increase the chances of me coming away with a victory, and if you can do that in loads of different areas, then you can come away with a victory more often. And yes, you could go straight through the centre of the map, outspot this heavy that may be in the middle of an open field, may or may not be, and then you can get the victory. But by going this way round, we're almost certain with all of the bushes and stuff that we're never going to get outspotted by this heavy tank because of the view range of this light tank. And that is why I really do enjoy these sort of scenarios where you are having to carry just a little bit more, where you are having to move in more knowledgeable ways and learn a little bit more about the map, rather than just being blindly going to the same position every single game, which, yeah, you can do very well by going to certain positions within the game, but they don't always yield the same results. And you can see here with a limited 5 rounds of APCR and the limited penetration of the standard rounds, we need to make sure that if this guy is on full health, that we can deal every single shot of damage without having to worry about the fact we may bounce or we may have to do something like that. Now, the aufl's Panzer Panther, in terms of trying to make a ton of silver, is probably not the tank that you really want in the game for that, but that is not what the aufl's Panzer Panther is about. It's a tier 7 after all. They have a decent silver earning potential, but not the best. And now you can see me just taking a little stroll into the central area of the map. I have no idea where this heavy tank is at the moment, and I guess what I was trying to do is just get forward. Maybe he'd actually gone in like a clockwise direction with me, that sort of thing. We don't really know, but we pop our little the combat rations, which actually spots the KV-1S, who is luckily a one-shot, and we finish him. And that is how you really carry in light tanks, and that is why I think they're super dangerous, and people underestimate the value of remaining your light tanks hit points until the end of the game, where you can use them effectively and way more effectively, as you can see with this result here, picking up 3,249 damage, 8 damaging hits that were the final ones for the enemies, of course 8 destroyed, and 788 assistance. We managed to pick up nearly 200,000 silver within this free play as well, having Pride Premium, because of the German operation for both playing in German tanks and destroying other tanks, and also playing in a German tank that also destroys other German tanks, if that makes sense. So there's like a 100% bonus to silver when you're playing in Germans at the minute if you complete those conditions, which is why we earned so much. But if we weren't having those operations, we'd probably be looking at about 70 to 80,000 silver. So really amazing gameplay, really great kind of replay to showcase some extra aspects of World of Tanks that you can use personally to improve your own gameplay. And of course, if you want any questions answered, any different opinions on this tank, and of course, whether or not you should actually get this tank, it's a definite. Try your hardest during June to pick up this tank for free. It really is amazing, and I really hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to check out the 2 gameplay playlists here on the screen right now, and I'll see you in those. Goodbye.